believers. Now, this video is critically important. It's important for everybody in the world. I don't have enough space to write the perfect title. It's not just for Jews and Christians, but also I want to make a disclaimer first, because I don't want to have to go through the effort and the pointless need to make a video for Jewish people and a video for Christian people. I'm going to just make this one video, and in order to honor both prospective intended audiences, I'll make it universal. So I'm not going to say Jesus, I'll say Messiah, but I will still read from the few New Testament books when I do. But if you're Jewish, you could even ignore these, because the things I'm going to read from Daniel and Ezekiel and Psalms and Zechariah and from the Adamic calendar themselves act as standalone proof. Is just that there are things in the New Testament that help solidify it. That's all. So this video is universal. Take a sip of my coffee. This video is very important. Now, at the end of the day, the simple fact remains is either the Messiah will be coming at some point in 2023 or he won't. Okay, it's 50-50. He either will or he won't. There's no degree in between. Okay, so I'm either correct in saying that the Messiah will come in 2023 or I will not be. Nobody could say it would be a bad thing to prepare as if Messiah is coming, to make ourselves, to reform ourselves, turn ourselves to God and get ready as if it were going to happen. There's nothing wrong with doing that. There's not very much time left until 2023, and even if it was to happen at the end of 2023, we only have just over a year left. Okay, that's a nice short period of time and an opportunity for any Jew, Christian, or anybody in the world from any religious background or non-religious background to get themselves ready in case they find this evidence compelling. Because I can assure you that this evidence is compelling. And I think it is quite shameful that there aren't other Jews and Christians out there professing 2023. It's not because I'm some deluded, individual that's just gone out there like the millions that already exist and created bogus theories. I will show you astounding evidence from the verses themselves, and there's no room for doubt. If the Bible is real and if the Bible is correct, then according to what was told to us in the Bible, Messiah should be coming in 2023. Okay, so this is of profound importance to all Jews, all Christians, and everybody else out there. And it shows something very incredible. So everybody needs to take this seriously. Whether you're Jewish, Christian, no matter what you are, I urge you to share the message. Okay, I don't need my face going out there. I don't want my face going around everywhere, but share the message. Okay, because this is very, very important stuff. If the Messiah if I am correct and Messiah does come next year, then most of everybody is not going to be ready. We're all going to be caught by surprise, just like it ironically says in the verses. Okay, we'll be caught unawares and everything if we're not prepared. So I have probably about a dozen verses to go through here. So what I'll do first is read the Tanakh verses. Okay, so if we go over to Daniel chapter 12, okay, Daniel's just been shown the great vision with all the terrible things that will befall Israel. Some of which, the most major core things are that Israel will go desolate, that it would fall, that it would be conquered, okay, that the people will be scattered. Also, the temple sacrifices will be stopped, and what was the other thing? The abomination, the important one, would be built on the Temple Mount. These very important things, however many that is, like 5 or so, are the key, core, critical things that Daniel says will happen. So he's just finished talking all about that. So in 12 verse 5, he says, "And I have looked, I Daniel, and lo, 2 others are standing, one here at the edge of the flood, and one there at the edge of the flood. And he saith to the one clothed in linen, who is upon the waters of the flood, Till when is the end of these wonders?" So he's just been shown all this, and he asked the angel, till when is the end of these wonders? Okay, and in verse 7, "I hear the one clothed in linen, who is upon the waters of the flood, and he does lift up his right hand and his left unto the heavens, and sweareth by him who is living to the age, that after a time, times and a half, and at the completion of the scattering of the power of the holy people, finished are all these. Okay? And then later he says, and I have heard and I do not understand. And I say, O my Lord, what is the latter end of these? And he says lower in verse 11, and from the time of the turning aside of the perpetual sacrifice into the giving out of the desolating abomination are days 1,290. Oh, the blessedness of him who is waiting earnestly and does come to the days 1,335. And thou go on to the end, then thou dost rest and dost stand in thy lot at the end of days. So I'm trying to make this video shorter and quicker as well. So what we have is a period of 3.5 times, and then a mention of 1290 days and 1335 days. Okay, so to make everything really quick, instead of trying to sound smart and fancy and word everything real complicated, right? The 3.5 times, if a time is equal to 360 years, which I can verify with a New Testament verse, but I'm not alone in suggesting this anyways, right? But if a time is 360 years, this would give 1,260 years for that figure. Now this aligns with quite a few verses in the New Testament, so from a New Testament perspective, there is some more support for that, right? Now, if it is correct though, bear with me, 3.5 times being 1,260 years, how would that compare in relation to 1,290 days and 1,335 days? Well, God has told us that the end is at the 1,335th. We know that 1290 comes before 1335. So you have a span that goes from 0 up to 1335, and at some point over here you have 1290. Okay? That's one way you could look at it. That's logical, because we know that the 1335 is the end. Okay? That is the logic. Now, if we go over also to, well, actually, no, I could explain this part first. So, the abomination that was built on the Temple Mount, what would this be? Okay? Now, many people have said it was, I think, Antiochus Epiphanes, whatever his name was, who put a statue of Zeus in the temple and made people sacrifice pigs. While this is terrible, many terrible things like that took place in history in Israel. Even the Jewish kings did. I'm not saying sacrifice pigs, but the Jewish kings were erecting Asherim and Asherah poles, and they had the groves on top of the mountains and all this, and they were doing heathen sacrifices. It's rebuked throughout the Tanakh. So terrible things and abominable things like that took place many times, but all of that is trumped by the fact that a new and opposing religion of Islam desecrated the remains of the temple and rebuilt an entirely new religious monument in dedication to a new and foreign god. This is contrary to the law of Moses. Do not let the name of any foreign god come off your tongue. Do not let anybody or yourselves worship a foreign god in Israel. But yet this has happened. It is the ultimate abomination. Within the Dome of the Rock itself are statements rebuking the prophets of the Tanakh. Because, you know, I own a Quran. It's tucked somewhere underneath my couch here. But I own a Quran in Arabic, okay? Arabic and English. And it's an authentic, bona fide Quran. And I have read myself in Surah 9 and in Surah 5, okay? As is known, Islam teaches that the Jews, this is what they believe, that the Jews rewrote the Tanakh, rewrote the laws of Moses. Okay, that the Jewish Bible is a bunch of nonsense, essentially. And that's why their prophet had to be given the words of the Quran. Okay, it is a replacement of the Tanakh. It doesn't get much more abominable than that. God said to Moses, you can't change a dot or letter on any word. You know, don't take words out, don't put words in, don't change the law of God, or essentially you'd be cursed. Even Jesus said that in Matthew 5. However, we have the entire rewriting of the Jewish Tanakh. This is heinous, okay? Their prophet trumps all the prophets of the Tanakh. In his vision where he went up to the throne of God and he ascended up through all the heavens, he surpassed all of the different biblical prophets, even Jesus at the end. Okay, he went past Moses and everything, got to stand before God, or his God, Allah. Okay, this is all very, very heinous. Okay, even the New Testament says, no man has gone up into the heavens, and no man has come back down from the heavens. No human, no son of man, right, except for the fallen one. Now, so their religion is in direct opposition. In Surah 5 and in Surah 9, you know, it reinforces that anybody who teaches, you know, they say that Jews call whoever it was, Elijah or something, the son of God, and they rebuke Jews for that. And they say that their scribes and priests invented their laws. I mean, all of these abominable accusations, but in Surah 5 it says that, non-believers should be crucified and have their limbs cut off. There's terrible, terrible things. The entire empire of Islam represented one of conquering and replacement. And if you didn't agree and convert to Islam, you were beheaded or exiled, or you had to pay a jizya tax. This is something that very well happened. Now, for that religion, with such opposition to Judaism and Christianity, okay, to take over the Holy Land and to build the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount, that trumps any statue of Zeus. Do you follow me? Forcing some people to kill some pigs is nothing compared to forcing millions of Jews to convert to a foreign god. That does not compare, okay? Now, it's like everybody in the world has been blind to this. Jews and Christians alike have been blind to all these things I'm going to discuss here. There aren't even websites. I don't even think there's more than a couple books out there that talk about 2023. But the point is that the Dome of the Rock was built by the 10th Caliph of Islam. Okay? And this 10th Caliph, when he built the Dome of the Rock, it was in 688 AD. And this is the date recorded and verified by Muslim scholars. Some say from the West and from Europe and whatever that it could have been a few years later that it was completed. But nonetheless, it was built, founded, whatever you want to call it, and the Muslim authorities say in 688. Now, what is striking is that from 688 AD up until 1948 AD, which was the rebirth of Israel, that's an exact span of 1260 years. Now we see that's the same number that was said to Daniel, the same number. But what about the units of time? Okay, because it said 1290 days and 1335 days, even if the 3.5 times is a number of 1260, who's to say it's days? Why should I say it's years? Well, verification that God does work like this, in that it is talking about years, can be found in Ezekiel chapter 4, where he's telling Ezekiel that basically, I'm going to make you suffer, so to speak, right? You're going to suffer. I'm going to cause you to suffer for the sins of Israel. A day for a year, okay? And he says in verse 4, and thou lie on thy left side, and thou hast placed the iniquity of the house of Israel on it. The number of the days that thou liest on it, thou bearest their iniquity. And I have laid on the years of their iniquity, the number of days, 390 days, and thou hast borne the iniquity of the house of Israel. And thou hast completed these, and hast lain on thy right side a second time, and hast borne the iniquity of the house of Judah 40 days, a day for a year. A day for a year I have appointed to thee. So, therefore it is justified, and I have a reason and a biblical precedent to say that God would and does do this type of exchange of time units. So, when it's 1260 days, we know, looking back at history, that there's no period of 3.5 short, meager years where something so profound took place. But we know that the Empire of Islam has ruled for about 1400 years. When we look back at history, it agrees with everything that I'm going to suggest here, that it's 688 AD, okay, when the Dome of the Rock, the abomination, was built on the Temple Mount, that Empire of Islam, that was the signet, bam, stamped right there on the Temple Mount. Then they ruled for 1260 years. Then the Jews got Israel back. Israel was reborn and regained by the Jews in 1948 at the end of the 1260. That's not a coincidence, okay? And Daniel said that the abomination and all these certain things had to come to pass. Well, I emphasized the wrong point in that sentence. He said that certain things had to come to pass. He said that the scattering of the holy people. This is in reference to the exile. Okay, he talked about a flood overthrowing Israel. So we know that he warned us that Israel will go desolate, okay? And it did literally go desolate. He warned that the people will be scattered into exile. We know that this did happen. A vast majority initially when Rome conquered Israel and overthrew it in like 70 AD. But then for hundreds of years, there were still Jews and Christians in Israel. But eventually, over time, more and more of them went into exile and were scattered. It took hundreds and hundreds of years. Okay, that was another condition. So he laid out all these conditions that I had mentioned already before. All of those conditions were fulfilled by 688. If you took points in time before then, it doesn't work out because the Jews and the Christians are still in there and all those things had not occurred, especially the abomination being built on the Temple Mount. Only in 688 had all those things that Daniel specified must occur. Only by then had they all occurred. Israel went desolate, Israel fell, Israel got conquered, the Jews and Christians, the people got scattered throughout the earth, okay? And the other one was the temple sacrifices were stopped. Okay, this actually happened numerous times in history. But the ironic thing is where Daniel says here that, and from the time of the turning aside of the perpetual sacrifice, this occurred with Babylon initially. It also happened again with King Alexander later on in around 200 to 300 and something BC. It happened at many points in time with the Greeks and the Romans. But the first time it happened most prominently was with Babylon, and this was in around 602 BC. And Daniel says that from the time of the turning aside of the perpetual sacrifice to the giving out of the desolating abomination, the very thing we're talking about, are days 1,290. If this is 1,290 years, from 602 BC, you precisely come to 688 AD. This is not a coincidence yet again. But not only that, if you then go from 688 AD and count forward 1,290 years, you come to the year of the Camp David Accords in 1978, where again, as we saw in 1948, we saw the great battle between Islam and Judaism and Christianity, and it came to an end and Israel was reborn. And then in 1978, peace was made in similar lines again. So all of these things are having fulfillment in history at the exact, precise, verified numerical points according to Daniel's prophecy. Okay, this is not a coincidence. All right? So when Daniel says that the end is 1335, that equals 2023. Now the other astonishing thing is that on the Adamic calendar, the AC calendar, okay, where you count forward all the years given in the book of Genesis, this guy was 30 years old when he had his son, and then that son was 40 years old when he had that son. When you do that and you add up all the math, okay, and I'm not alone in these findings or the numbers that I've concluded, many, countless others have. It's the scholarly factual proof, okay, that certain periods of time transpired at certain points in the history, okay, and Abraham, this is widely accepted. I don't think anybody would dispute it because it's basic math. Abraham was born 1948, okay? If Israel came from the loins of Abraham, Abraham was born 1948 AC, after Adam's creation. And here we have, on a completely unrelated, mathematically completely unrelated calendar, has no relation to it, okay? Gregorian has no relation to the Adamic calendar, mathematically whatsoever. It's irrelevant. We can use both, compare both. But yet on the Gregorian calendar, 1948, ironically, we have the rebirth of Israel. So birth of Abraham, 1948, birth of Israel again, 1948. The Tanakh actually has a verse where it says, when Abraham was 75 years old, God spoke out to him and called him out of the land of idolatry and told him to go on to the promised land. This would correspond to 2023 after creation. This, applied to Gregorian in parallel, would mean 75 years after the rebirth of Israel in 1948, you would have, when the world, so to speak, Abraham, his seed, all the nations were blessed in the seed of Abraham, correct? Right. So from that one man born in 1948 and who left the land of idolatry for the promised land in 2023, from his loins will come Israel, and from all that in him will be blessed all the nations of the earth. So in parallel, in 2023, instead of Abraham being called out of the land of idolatry, just him being called out to the promised land, it will be all of those seed who are blessed through him who will be called out of the greater land of idolatry, being the polluted earth, so to speak, and be brought into the true promised land. Okay? That is an astounding parallel, and that's not a coincidence. Okay? Now, aside from all these things, it's been a common belief in Judaism alone that there would be a final generation if Israel was to ever be reborn. So in 1948, many people speculated that within 70 or 80 years, we would have the end days and the arrival of Messiah. Okay? If we go and read Psalm 90, it says in verse 10, days of our years, and this is most of the people who believe it based upon this verse in part, days of our years, in them are 70 years, and if by reason of might 80 years. Yet is there enlargement, labor, and vanity, for it has been cut off hastily, and we fly away. So this verse here is not just an obscure mention. I mean, people in the Bible live to 120, even 900 years. This is an obscure mention. It's cryptic, it's esoteric, if you want to call it that. It's showing you that when Israel is reborn, it will only last between 70 to 80 years. But yet it says, if 80 is the upper maximum, it says, yet is there enlargement, labor, and vanity. So it's saying if it was to stretch up towards the upper maximum of 80, that would be labor and vanity. And then it says, it has been cut off hastily, and we fly away. So we know that it's going to be more than 70, it's going to be less than 80, and at some point in between, everything's going to be cut off, and the chosen will fly away. And that's the only mention in Tanakh about flying away. And that's very similar to the Christian concept of a rapture, where it says that the angels will come down with Messiah, like Daniel 7 says, and will come to the chosen of the earth during the time of the judgment. Those who pass in judgment will be taken up off the earth. Maybe you'll be taken to a safe place in the earth. You'll be taken off the planet. We're not going to fuss into inter-Jewish and Christian debates here on little petty things like that. Okay, will we fly away? All right, so that's pretty astounding. Also, in Zechariah, we have a similar type of prophecy. Okay, he's seeing a vision of the end days. Is my phone ringing? One sec. Hello? Yeah, we're almost getting something important. Yeah, I know. Don't worry. All right. Sorry about that. Anyways, so in Zechariah, which chapter is this? Zechariah 1. He's got. I don't have time to read the whole thing out, right? He's talking about the future, and also let me change the music here. He's talking about the future, okay? And he says here, and the messenger of Hashem answereth and saith, Hashem of hosts, to when dost thou not pity Jerusalem and these cities of Judah that thou hast abhorred these 70 years? Okay, instead of me reading a huge chunk of text, that's another cryptic mention of the final 70-year period. And then what period is God talking about? This is not talking about one in ancient time. This is talking about one in the future, right? I don't have 10, 15 minutes to prove that, right, by digesting the chapter down for everybody. But it's talking about the future, I can assure you. Okay, and I've had many people agree with me on that. I think it's fairly logical. Okay, so why will God abhor Jerusalem for 70 years? Whatever the reason we could fuss over, the fact is, it's talking about the final days. So this would be, even though it doesn't say 75, it still puts us right here in that final few years time frame. Okay, so I'll close Daniel chapter 12. All right, so all those numbers and those points in history are well illustrated. Now, in Daniel chapter 7, he says, he's talking about the fourth beast, which was Islam. He says, then I wish for certainty concerning the fourth beast that was diverse from them all. That's one point. Daniel says this 3 times, that this creature is unlike all the others. We know Rome was an identical copy of Greece, essentially. Same people, religion, culture, architecture, virtually everything was identical. Most importantly, the religion was identical. Okay? Rome was not different. It was basically an extent of Greece. It was like the Greco-Roman kingdom. Essentially was Greece. Greece and Rome both existed separately. Okay, Greece came to power in this one biblical aspect sense of being a beast kingdom. Rome was big, bad, mighty, but if anything, it was just the tail end of the Grecian system. Okay, but never. Moving on. Hold on one sec. Then I wish for certainty concerning the fourth beast that was diverse from them all, fearful exceedingly. Its teeth of iron, its nails of brass. It is devoured. It is break small, and the remnant with its feet it is trampled. And concerning the 10 horns that are in its heads. So Daniel talks about this beast having 10 horns. In the book of Revelation, the beast is talked about as having 10 horns, because it's talking about the same one final beast. Okay, so there's many mentions of 10 horns. Now, everybody has theories of the yin-yang, who the 10 kings were. There's millions of ideas. Well, guess what? In Islam, when the founding prophet of Islam died suddenly by poisoning, which is also mentioned in Daniel, that he would die and no one would be able to help him, he would just die suddenly. But when he died suddenly, everybody was worried because he didn't have a kingdom and an empire yet. They had been trying to start and build one. So once he died, they established something called the caliphate. Okay? And there's a lot of dispute in Islam about this and that there, but essentially, the prophet of Islam was the first ruler. Okay? But he died. Now, it's said of later in Revelation that these 10 heads, one of them was slain. The first head was slain, and then it was reborn, and the whole earth worshipped it. This would have been fulfilled with Islam because when their prophet was alive, they didn't have a kingdom, so to speak. When he died is when the kingdom was scrambled to be formed. And they went out conquering everywhere and doing all of that. Okay? So, it says, and concerning the 10, and like I said before, the 10th caliph built the Dome of the Rock, right? And concerning the 10 horns that are in its head, and of the other that came up, and before which 3 have fallen, even of that horn that has eyes and a mouth speaking great things, and whose appearance is great above its companions, I was seeing, and this horn is making war with the saints and has prevailed over them. And I think this also represents the prophet, you know, conquering over all the Jews and Christians and everything, right? And I was seeing this horn is making war with the saints and prevailed over them, till that the Ancient of Days has come and judgment is given to the saints of the Most High. We know from Daniel, I think it was chapter 4 early on, where he talks about the statue, and elsewhere, if it's not in that chapter, he says that the beast kingdoms will still exist after they fall. It's not like they vanish. They will still exist up until the end, it says. They'll be prolonged for a season and a time. Okay, and he explicitly says that the fourth beast kingdom, even when it dissipates, so to speak, it will still exist in the toes of the statue up until the very, very end. Okay, and we see that true with Islam today. It has spread across the world, it is everywhere, and so forth. Okay, and he says here at verse 23, thus he said, the fourth beast is the fourth kingdom in the earth that is diverse from all kingdoms, and it consumeth all the earth, and it treadeth it down and breaketh it small. Now the kingdom of the Roman Empire was bigger than all the other beast kingdom empires, Babylon, everything else. The Roman Empire just looks like lipstick smeared around the Mediterranean. It's the upper little section of Africa, a little bit of Asia, and not even all of Europe. Okay? The Islamic Empire was like 10 times the size. You can't even compare it. Okay, it's diverse from all kingdoms, consumeth all the earth, treadeth it down, breaketh it small. And the 10 horns out of the kingdoms are 10 kings, the 10 caliphs. They rise, and another does rise after them, the 11th caliph, because they have many caliphs, right? But those first 10 were all companions of the founder prophet. Okay? And another does rise after them, being an 11th, and it is diverse from the former, and 3 kings it humbleth. And words as an adversary of the Most High it does speak, and the saints of the Most High it does wear out, and hope to change seasons and law, and they are given into its hand, till a time, times, and a division of time. So once again, we see the marker of 3.5 times, which is 1260 years. And where does Daniel say it's applied? He says it's applied after the 10th king. The 10th king built the Dome of the Rock. That is Daniel identifying in duplicate this period of time in our known history. And the judge is seated, and its dominion they cause to pass away, to cut off and to destroy unto the end. Okay? Now, I have to be very quick because someone's waiting for me. If we go over to Revelation real quick, those are all the Tanakh verses. If any Jewish people want to hang around and hear these, because none of these are I'm not going to be saying Jesus, Jesus, or anything like that there. I'll keep it to just Messiah and all of that there. So anyways, all these verses will back all of that information up, so it's worth listening to, right? In Revelation 12, it's giving a quick illustrative timeline of events from a higher perspective, okay? Vast periods of time. But right here, it's talking about when Jesus was born, then, the Satan opposed him, Jesus died, and he ascended up to heaven. This is that period of time, which is around 29 AD. Okay, and listen to what it says here. And Israel, brought forth a male child, Jesus, who is about to rule the nations with a rod of iron. And caught away was her child unto God in his throne. And the woman did flee to the wilderness, Israel. This is a reference to the exile, where she had a place made ready from God, that there they may nourish her, days 1,260. We know this to be 1,260 years, because Israel didn't go into exile for 3.5 years, did they? It's nearly been 2,000 years. Okay? And there came war in the heaven. Michael and his messengers, whom Daniel referenced, did war against the dragon, and the dragon did war and his messengers, and they did not prevail, nor was their place found any more in the heaven. And the great dragon was cast forth, the old serpent who is called devil and the adversary, who is leading astray the whole world, and he was cast forth to the earth, and his messengers were cast forth with him. Okay, so we see the mention right there, 1260 again, but it's also mentioned lower down here. This chapter speaks in duplicate of itself, right? So it repeats everything from a different perspective just lower down. In verse 13, proof, when the dragon saw that he was cast forth to the earth, he pursued the woman who did bring forth the male. And there were given to the woman 2 wings of the great eagle, that she may fly to the wilderness, to her place where she is nourished a time, times, and a half a time from the face of the serpent. And the serpent did cast forth after the woman out of his mouth water as a river, they may cause her to be carried away by the river. Daniel called the invading Roman army that will cause Israel to fall, a flood that will come in. This is the same terminology being used. Jesus quoted the book of Daniel and made explicit verbatim name reference to it a few times in the New Testament. Okay, he used it to corroborate and verify his own authenticity, right? So it's not like he didn't know about the book of Daniel. This is all being said for a reason. So we have 1260 days in Revelation 12, literally talking about the same period of time where it says that the same measure is 3.5 times. That right there is the mathematical, simple algebra proof that a time equals 360. If 3.5 times is 1260 days, then a time is 360 days. A day for a year, that's 360 years. So 3.5 times is 1260 years. Okay? So we would have a period of exile of the Jewish and the Christian people, but the Jewish people will be exiled from Israel under the reign of the fourth beast kingdom for 1260 years, from 688, when they put their founding monument on the Temple Mount, until when the Jews literally got Israel back in 1948. That is 100% historically and biblically fulfilled. Okay? Moving on, in Revelation here, we see, I could read that one later. This is to counter a Christian argument that commonly happens. Now, I don't have time to read it because I'm short for time, but in Daniel chapter 10 and 11, he literally verbatim talks about the beasts, like the Grecian beast, the Medes and Persians beast. Sorry, it doesn't itch. And he says, he doesn't say King Alexander, right? But he says that the first king of Grecia is, this horn on that creature. He explicitly verbatim identifies basically King Alexander. Every Jew and Christian accepts this. Nobody disputes that. Now, if you read those paragraphs in whatever chapter it is, chapter 10 or 11, I think it goes through 10, then 11. But in either case, you're watching the fall of this, the start and the fall of the Grecian Empire. It falls, it splits into 4 sub-kingdoms. This is widely accepted by all Jewish and Christian teachers, okay, and history. However, a lot of different kingdoms throughout the world you could always apply biblical things to, because a lot of things happen similarly. For instance, the Vatican's on 7 hills. Jerusalem was on 7 hills. Mecca, or whatever it is, and Islam is on 7 hills. Everything is on 7 hills. Atlantis from Greek mythology was on 7 hills. So I mean, everything's on 7 hills. There's many, and lots of kingdoms broke down into 4 kingdoms, right? Because 4 corners to the world, right? But it does say that the Grecian kingdom would fall. It wouldn't last very long. It was split into 4 sub-kingdoms, and then it goes on for like a whole page of information about all these kings and queens from different regions and all this history. That's the latter Greco-Roman history, okay? Now, I don't have time to get into all of that because there's a lot more stuff, and where I believe it mentions King Herod, which many others believe is, and Jesus, but I won't get into that for the sake of brevity for this video, okay? But in those chapters, it's talking about handing over the kingdom at one point, and an exactor causes the honor of the kingdom to pass over. And then a despicable one, who is the founding prophet of Islam, rose up on that station. So he's the last one noted by Daniel in this entire illustrated scene of his to occupy the kingdom in the honor of the kingdom. So this despicable one, as he says, will gain it. Now, this despicable one, he goes on for like half a page or more in great detail about. So this figure is extremely important. It says of this figure that strong rulers will come out of him who would erect the abomination on the Temple Mount. Therefore, Daniel has further confirmed that this is Islam that he is speaking about. This despicable one would not only build the abomination on the Temple Mount, but that, well, his rulers that come from him would. But it says that this despicable one honors a new and unheard of God. That is a law. Nobody had heard of a law because the founding prophet created him. It was his invention. Nobody had ever heard of him. He did not exist before. The prophet's own tribespeople were pagans who believed the Babylonian deities. They worshipped the moon god, okay? And the moon god of that religion was called Alalila. So what he did, which was typical of cultures of the time, is he shortened and changed and altered names so that people would have something somewhat familiar, and he called it Allah. He also created the Arabic language. So he could say Allah means the Most High. Now in Islam also, he in effect, and all the caliphs reinforced the term Bismillah. Bismillah is where you swear and creed your soul to Allah as God. Okay, Bismillah. That's why you hear Muslims say Bismillah all the time. Okay, they're swearing their soul to Allah. Now, Bismillah means that, right? I don't know verbatim what it means, but that is the essence of it. Now, the Bismillah is written by command on their foreheads and on their right arms, which is what the book of Revelation says would be done with the name of the beast. Okay, it will cause its believers to put the name on their forehead and their arms. Right, but I'll get to that verse in a second, right? But Islam did this. They created a currency and put the Bismillah on it. They forced everybody to become Muslim or else face beheading, or you'd have to pay a jizya tax. Jews had to wear a star. Christians had to wear belts. You couldn't walk on the same side of the road as a Muslim person. This is what they did to every nation. They came to one Jewish city, and the chief rabbi of that city bowed down to the Muslim leaders and converted so that he wouldn't be beheaded. And then the entire city was rounded up. All the boys were lined up. The inspectors pulled down the boys' pants and checked to see if the boys had any hairs. If they had hairs, then their heads were cut off. If they didn't have hairs down there, then they were too young to be legally murdered according to Islam, and they were taken away as slaves. All the women and girls were taken away as slaves. Okay? And this is just one Jewish city. These abominations occurred everywhere, and this is what happened. This is utter fulfillment of everything that was warned about, that Jesus warned about. He said, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by tents and by encampments, head for the hills. Right? And woe to those who flee in the Sabbath. Why did he say that? Because historically, when Islam surrounded and conquered, they hid off in their tents and targeted people who were trying to flee during the Sabbath. Okay? And that historically took place. So, in Revelation 13, I don't have time to read it anymore, but it details the fourth and final beast kingdom that Daniel spoke of. And it talks about it having 10 kings, just like Daniel did. It's the same beast. But it also says that a lamb-like beast would rise up with this one. Now Daniel says the beasts are kingdoms. This is what the angel tells him. So we know that each beast is a kingdom. Now a kingdom has a king. Okay, that's why the beasts have horns. Okay, the horns represent kings. Now in Revelation here, keeping things simple for the brevity of this video, it's the same one beast that's being spoken about, the final one, which is Islam, which had its first 10 caliphs. Why are 10 mentioned? I should have said this earlier to stress this point. 10 are stressed because the 10th built the abomination on the Temple Mount. Thank you. Okay? Now, the lamb-like beast who rises up from the land, it says that he causes everybody... Where is it? I'll just read it. And I saw another beast coming up out of the land, and it has 2 horns like a lamb, and it was speaking as a dragon. Why would it describe the prophet of Islam like this? Because the prophet of Islam believed in Jesus. He just didn't believe that Jesus died and resurrected. He didn't really believe he was Messiah. He doesn't believe in the Holy Spirit. He doesn't believe anybody can be called Son of God. You know, these are major differences with Islam. According to Christian theology in the New Testament as defined by Jesus, those are criteria that make one Antichrist. So there would be the Antichrist system that Jesus warned everybody about and cautioned everybody about. The very system that puts Jews and Christians to death, historically did. Right? So it says here, but nonetheless, it's lamb-like because it promotes Jesus. Just a different type, different stylized Jesus. And it promotes a masqueraded form of righteousness that still goes out and plunders kingdoms and forces conversions, beheads, and enslaves. So it's lamb-like, but it speaks like a dragon. And it says here, I saw another beast coming up out of the land, and it has 2 horns like a lamb, and is speaking as a dragon, and maketh all the authority of the first beast, and all the authority of the first beast, meaning the kingdom of Islam, does it do before it, and maketh the land and those dwelling in it that they shall bow before the first beast, whose deadly stroke was healed. The first king was the founding prophet, whom ironically is the false prophet, the lamb-like beast here. Remember, the beasts represent kingdoms. Okay, that's the difference. And also, the founding prophet never had a kingdom. He had what he had, whatever you want to call it, but it didn't get to become the empire of Islam. There was no caliphate or kingship when he existed. He never existed as a king. He ruled, but they didn't have a kingdom yet. Do you follow me? So when he died suddenly, which again Daniel mentions in chapters 10 or 11, that he died, and nobody was there to be able to help him because the founding prophet died of poisoning. When he died suddenly, they scrambled to form a kingdom on the remnants of what they had thus created so far with him. Okay? And that is a rebirth, symbolically, of that founding prophet who died. Okay? So, where is it? And all the authority of the first beast does it do before it, and maketh the land and those dwelling in it that they shall bow before the first beast, whose deadly stroke was healed. So to this day, if you even mention the name of their prophet, you have to bless him. Okay, if you desecrate the name of the prophet, you're in serious trouble, right? And I'm not saying any of this stuff here in disrespect. I'm saying this for the benefit of everybody's souls and for, the honor of the true, highest, almighty God. That's what I'm saying. And if you have a problem with that, then you have a problem with God. But it says here that it makes everybody in the land bow before the first beast. So who historically made everybody on earth bow to Islam? It was the founding prophet and all those caliphates who came after him, right? Whose deadly stroke was healed. Now, nobody else came back from death besides the person Elijah resurrected or brought back from death. Maybe one or two people Jesus brought back from death. Nobody else was brought back from death. Deadly stroke was healed. This is in reference to the kingdom. Sorry, to the kingdom, because the prophet died before he could have a kingdom. So his hopes and dreams of that empire were resurrected, so to speak, were brought back from death. And how are they brought back from death? By this lamb-like beast, which was essentially, okay, the theology of Islam. I'm not saying the lamb-like beast was. The lamb-like beast was the prophet, but he was also that first head that died. Anyways. And it leadeth astray those dwelling on the land, because the signs that were given to it before the beast, saying to those dwelling upon the land to make an image to the beast that is a stroke of the sword did live. Okay? And what is this image, right? And maketh all the small, the great, and the rich, and the poor, and the freemen, and the servants, and may give to them a mark, the image, upon their right hand or upon their foreheads. And like I said, in Islam, the Bismillah must be put on your forehead, on your right arm. You can see it in photos. When the terror groups go out and terrorize people, they have it literally on their foreheads and on their right arms. Okay, it's the creed, that's where they put it. And that no one, the name of God goes on your forehead. In Old Testament Tanakh theology and in New Testament theology, name of God on your forehead. Okay, so if Allah is not God, then who do you have on your forehead? You're swearing credence and allegiance to who? Not God, right? Who else could it be? Satan, right? Or whoever else, right? Some Jewish people don't believe in a Satan being, but you get my point. The non-God, right? And it says no one will be able to buy or sell except he who is having the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Right? So only if you swear the Bismillah would you be able to buy, eat, sell. This is exactly what happened under the caliphates. And it says, here is the wisdom, he who's having understanding, let him count the number of the beast, for the number of a man it is, and the number is 616. And when John wrote this, it was in Greek, and when he wrote it in Greek, the way Greek is written, you write 600, and then 60, and then 6. You do not write 3 6s. What John wrote in Greek, oh, actually, I still have it here. How about that? Check that out. This is the Greek. Okay? That's the Greek. Now this is the Islamic Bismillah. So John saw in his vision this upon the foreheads. I mean, they're literally the same symbols. This is a strange symbol. It is the same symbol as that, just turned around. Okay? Then you have the sword-like figure and the sword-like figure here. Okay, the line, where's the line go? Oh, the line's up here. Every single unique symbol is there. There is no coincidence here. Okay? So there's absolutely no coincidence. There's a lot more stuff that I could say as well. But anyways, I don't have time for all that. Oh yeah. Okay, so those verses I'm going to leave last. They're more so for Christians to counter some argument that they always typically make against what I'm saying. Why do I have Revelation 11 here? Ah, yes. So in Revelation 11, we have more New Testament confirmation of all these time periods. It says here, in this vision, rise up, the angels are going to measure Jerusalem and this and that there. It says, and the court that is without the sanctuary leave out, don't measure it, and thou mayest not measure it, because it was given to the nations in the holy city, they shall tread down for 42 months. 42 months is 1260 days, day for a year, 1260 years. So what happened in the historical period of 1260 years that I've been talking about? The nations historically trampled Israel. They all fought over Israel. It literally came true. Okay? 42 months is mentioned twice in Revelation. I think it's also mentioned in Revelation 13. Where is it? Yeah, in verse 5, and there was given to it a mouth speaking great things, the final beast, and evil speakings. There was given to it authority to make war 42 months. Again, concreting in that Islam would rule for 1260 years. In that 1260-year period, the nations would trample Israel. Thank you. The abomination was standing. The people had been exiled and were continuing to be in exile. Israel had fallen. It was desolate. It was conquered. Everything Daniel said and prescribed, utterly fulfilled biblically and historically. Okay, so that is why 2023, according to the Bible, must be the final year. I don't know at what point during the year. I'm not saying I know what month, week, or day, or hour, or minute, or second it is. But it's at some point in 2023. It could happen a little bit before or a little bit after. That wouldn't surprise or disappoint me either. Well, it might disappoint me. I'd rather happen sooner than later. Now, a lot of Christians say that, oh, you can't know the day or hour. You're a false prophet. You're trying to say that you know this and that there. But the Bible says that even the angels don't know about it. Even Jesus doesn't know when it's going to happen. You're a false prophet. I'm so tired of hearing that. Listen to this here, right? It says here, in Mark 13:32, it's repeated in Luke 12 and in Matthew 24. Mark 13, and concerning that day and the hour, nobody has known. I haven't tried to say the day or the hour. I don't know the day or the hour. I don't know the week. I don't know the month. I don't even know what season of the year it'll take place in. If it's exactly 75 years after the rebirth of Israel, it would be in the middle of March, and then I might know the season or perhaps the month, but I still don't know the day or the hour. So I'm not a false prophet. So Christians need to get their Bible straight first, right? Concerning the day and the hour, nobody has known. Not even the messengers who are in heaven, not even the Son except the Father. Right? However, let's read the verses just before and just after that. It says in verse 30, verily I say to you that this generation may not pass away till all these things may come to pass, meaning all the things he just described earlier. Forget that. In verse 31, though, he says, the heaven and the earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. And concerning that day and the hour, nobody has known. So he might actually be talking about nobody's going to know when the heaven and the earth, the whole solar system, are going to be deleted and recreated. That's different than Jesus arriving on a planet that still exists and judging it. You know what I mean? And then for 1,000 years it's going to be healed. That's not the same. It could very well be that he's specifically saying when the heaven and the earth are deleted and recreated, that day and hour you don't know. But even if he is talking about when when the Messiah arrives, nobody's trying to say the day or hour. So there's no contradiction. Okay, if we go over to Matthew 24, again, in verse 35, the heaven and the earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. And concerning that day and the hour, nobody has known. So which one is he talking about? Is he talking about the arrival of Jesus, or when the earth and the heaven will pass away? Well, he did say one right after the other here, the heaven and the earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. And concerning that day and hour, in all fair reasoning, you would say that's in reference to the heaven and the earth passing away, not the judgment day. Okay? And, maybe the heaven and the earth do pass away soon, within proximity of the judgment day, but whatever. Those are minor side arguments, right? But you get where I'm going. It could go either way, but in either case, it says the day and the hour. Okay? But you know what's absolutely beautiful and striking here? You know it is? In Revelation 9, it says right here in verse 14, saying to the sixth messenger who had the trumpet, loose the four messengers who are bound at the great river Euphrates. This is when, the great stars fall into the earth. It opens up the pit. All the big bad things and the fallen angels come out. The earth is being smitten in the final days while the earth is still here. Okay? And it says here, saying to the sixth messenger who had the trumpet, loose the four messengers who are bound at the great river Euphrates, and loose the four messengers who have been made ready for the hour and the day, and the month and the year, that they may kill the third of men. So it sounds to me like the day, hour, month, and year is known, and it was actually told to us in a book that billions of people have had for thousands of years now. So I might even have a biblical argument against saying you can't know the day or the hour. Okay? Based on that. But besides that, in Luke 12, everybody loves to throw around, you don't know the day or the hour. You won't know when it comes. It says he comes like a thief. He'll catch us unawares. It does say that. But when you read the verses before and after that, it says, it basically says, if you're not watching and wise and know when the end is coming, then you'll be caught unawares. That's what it says. It doesn't say nobody will know when it comes. It says those who are not wise and watching for when the end is to arrive, those who have no clue that it's coming, you'll be caught unawares. And in Luke 12 is one of the places where it actually says that. In verse 36, and ye like to men waiting for the Lord, when he shall return out of the wedding feast, that he having come and knocked immediately they may open to him. Happy those servants whom the Lord having come shall find watching. How can you watch for an end when you don't know when it's coming? Okay, so happy those servants whom the Lord having come shall find watching. Verily I say to you that he will gird himself and will cause them to recline and meat, and having come will minister to them. And if he may then come in a second watch, a second visitation? What? And in the third watch he may come and may find it, so happy are those servants. And this know that if the master of the house, referencing Satan ruling the world, and this know that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief, Jesus, does come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken into. And notice it says what hour the thief does come. So another argument, you might even be able to know the day, but perhaps not the hour, right? But then we have Jesus saying he's going to come in a first, second, and a third watch, or that he could come in a first, second, and a third watch. But it says in verse 40, and ye then become ye ready. How can you be ready and watch for the end time if you don't know when it comes? Right? He says, and ye then become ye ready, because at the hour ye think not the Son of Man does come. And Peter says to him, Sir, unto this simile dost thou speak, or unto us all? And the Lord said, Who then is the faithful and prudent steward, who the Lord shall set over his household to give in season the wheat measure? Happy that servant, whom his Lord, having come, shall find doing so. Truly I say to you that over all his goods he will set him. And here's the important part, verse 45, where it starts. And if that servant may say in his heart, this is the average Christian on this earth saying, we don't know when Jesus comes, right? Nobody can know, right? And if that servant may say in his heart, my Lord does delay to come, and may begin to beat the men servants and the maid servants, to eat also and to drink and to be drunken, the Lord of that servant will come in a day in which he does not look for him, and in an hour that he does not know, and will cut him off in his portion with the unfaithful he will appoint. And that servant, who having known his Lord's will, and not having prepared, nor having gone according to his will, shall be beaten with many stripes. And he who not having known, and having done these things worthy of stripes, meaning a non-Christian, a non-believer, an atheist even, who did the same number of sins, shall be beaten with fewer stripes. And to everyone whom much was given, much shall be acquired from him, and to whom they did commit much more abundantly they will ask him. So what is actually said here, okay, is that if you're not watching for the end to come, how could you watch? Well, God told Daniel the numbers and the calculation. He told Daniel, I have a video on it, in like 4 to 6 places. Be wise, Daniel, and understand these numbers. Daniel asked for numbers and got numbers. He said, how long until? God told Daniel a calculation and said when the end would come. This is undeniable. That's how you can know and prepare and watch for when Jesus will come. But the striking thing is that verse 45 to 48 puts all petty arguments to death. It says, and if that servant may say in his heart, my Lord does delay to come, and may begin to beat the men servants, the Lord of that servant will come in a day in which he does not look for him. Why did Jesus say that? If the servant doesn't know when the Messiah is coming, or he thinks he's taking too long, meaning he doesn't know when he's coming. He doesn't know, okay, he's coming in 2023, right? He just has no clue. It's a question mark. My Lord delays to come. The Lord of that servant will come in a day he does not look for him. That implies that when you do know the date that you're looking for, he will come right on time. Those who don't know the date and aren't watching and prepared will be clueless to the time. Okay? And it says, the Lord of that servant will come to such a one in a day he does not look for him, and in an hour that he does not know, and will cut him off in his portion, and the unfaithful he will appoint. Okay? That is absolutely striking. Now, if we also go up to Revelation 3, we'll see further confirmation of this. One sec. Revelation 3, verse 3. It says, remember then how thou was, Jesus talking to the churches, remember then how thou was received and heard, and be keeping and reform. And if then thou mayest not watch, how are you supposed to watch for the return of Jesus? Are you supposed to stand outside on your porch for 2,000 years waiting for him to come back, thinking he's being delayed? No. He says, and thou mayest, it says, if then thou mayest not watch, I will come upon thee as a thief, and thou mayest not know what hour I will come upon thee. The very same words that Jesus just said in Luke 12. What does this show you? That Jesus is saying, if you're watching and knowing and preparing, you will know when the end is coming, and you will not be caught by surprise. An hour don't make a difference. That's 24 hours. That's a date. Even maybe weeks would make a difference because you're ready and you know when it's going to happen. It comes on time. If you don't know when it's going to happen, you have no clue when it's due to happen, and it will by nature catch you by surprise. If then thou mayest not watch, I will come upon thee as a thief, and thou mayest not know what hour I will come upon thee. Okay, that also implies that if you do have the wisdom and watch and know, that you could even possibly know the hour. Because he says, if you don't watch, you won't know the hour. That implies if you do watch, you will know the hour. Words from Jesus' mouth. Okay, so by all fair reason, we have all biblical and historical reason to know and understand that 2023 is the prescribed final year. I don't know which day it is. I don't know what week it is. It may be in March. because of the date from 1948. I don't know for sure. Okay? But it will be in 2023 if the Bible is correct. I'm willing to give or take a few months flux. Maybe some of the calendars got a bit off, whatever. You know what I mean? But I don't think they are. I think it will happen. All these UFOs have been seen up in the sky since 1948 with Roswell. These UFOs showed up. They're not hostile. They're not invading. All military declassified testimony for Congress, such as in the United States, says that they deactivate nuclear weapons. They frequently try to stop missiles from being fired. They're here maintaining a peace level. They're not doing the opposite of that and attacking us. What are they doing? They're watching us. What watches over? Angels, messengers, celestial messengers. Okay, these are the hosts of the heaven, the ones that God has set over the earth to watch. Why would they suddenly appear in 1948 and be all around the earth, even visible, being recorded and watching and not interfering or intervening? They're acting like angels, like watchers, and they've shown up at this precise period because Israel was reborn and they knew that there was one final generation until they have to come and gather everybody to fly away. They are other angels. Okay? That makes perfect sense. The evidence is out there physically for us. There's no other logical reason why they're here not doing anything for 70 years. Is this a tourist spot? Is Earth a zoo or an aquarium or an amusement park for them? No. Okay, it makes a lot more sense, this theory. You also have the heavenly sounds that have been heard around the world for about 10 years now. Okay, these sounds sound like giant trumpets. There's a lot of fake videos, but there's a lot of very real ones. Millions of people have heard the sounds. It is not fake. Science cannot fully explain them. They've had to invent new ideas of what it could be, like skyquakes, okay, or cosmic radiation affecting this and that there. Never heard it before, never been documented. These sounds are astronomical, are cosmic in nature, and when you put all these things together, and in the last few years, all the storms increasing, all the hurricanes reach magnitude 4 or 5, like this year, I know because where I live is affected by hurricanes. Other sections of the world who are affected by typhoons. All the typhoons have gotten stronger in the last few years. Earthquakes, volcanoes are erupting everywhere at a higher frequency. Okay, crime and just insanity of the human person has increased. All this wokeism and all this craziness and deviant behaviors around the world. So many countries have strip clubs and all these vile forms of perverted images everywhere, and there's just nonsense everywhere in the world. It's polluting everything. The power of the camera has caused so many people to suffer and been victimized, children even. There's so many terrible things that are happening in the world right now. There's even human cannibalism on a widespread scale. I mean, it's just absolutely insane, and something needs to be done about it. The earth right now, whether you're Jew or Christian, you have to agree that this world is ripe for a biblical end day event. It has to occur soon. If God destroyed Babel, for whatever reason he destroyed Babel, he has very much the same reason to do it now. If he destroyed Sodom, for whatever reason he destroyed Sodom, he has every reason to do it right now. Okay? There's no major difference between Sodom and Babel and what the world is like now on an average across the world. It's better in some areas, worse in some, but just generally speaking, the world is like Sodom. Right? It's time for us to flee Sodom. We're going to have to flee Sodom, but we can't flee the planet. We have to be taken off the planet because this planet's been so tainted. Just like a natural farmland, it needs to be harvested. The weeds and all the bad plants need to be burned. And then the land can rejoice, go barren, go virgin again, and then replenish and be re-beautified and then later re-inhabited. It needs to have a Sabbath 1,000-year rest for the earth. That's what needs to happen. God created the world in 6 days, which are 6,000 years. That means if he has a Sabbath, he has to let it rest for 1,000 years. Adam and Eve fell during the 6th day. It doesn't talk about them reaching the 7th and then living during the 7th. They fell in the 6 days. Earth didn't get to have its rest yet. Earth is due its 1,000-year rest. It's going to have that. So anyways, folks, like the New Testament says, we have a citizenship in the heavens. We're going to our destiny is to rejoin our heavenly family and to all be one and to be one with God like a child with their parent. So this is what's going to happen to the world. It's not that God hates the planet. The earth will be protected and renewed. Okay? And even if it's destroyed and new one's created, it's not that God hates the planet. And it's not that God hates people. God hates sin And that's why we need to reform, like Jesus said in Revelation 3. Anyways, I gotta go. Take care, folks. But people need to spread this message because it's not out there. There's no books, no websites. I get so tired trying to find videos and people talking about it. Nobody's talking about it. There's so much evidence for this. How could nobody be talking about it? Is the world that deluded and blind that they don't see this evidence before them? I am certainly not deluded and blind because this is the best confirmation of any evidence I've ever seen anybody suggest for this topic. There's no way that I'm wrong. I'm not trying to be arrogant. Like, it is the best. I've searched for like 20 years for explanations for all these things. This is the best explanation. Few others know about it, but nobody's out there talking about it and sharing it. Every Jew and Christian should be out there sharing this. All the churches, all the synagogues should be talking about this stuff, that the Messiah will be coming soon. Okay? And God forbid we do something to deserve it being put off longer. You know what I mean? When so many people are blind and ignorant to it as it is, we need to spread the awareness. The only thing you have to do is prepare. There's no harm in preparing, right? There's no harm in preparing. It could happen at any moment unexpectedly. That's what Judaism even always taught. We should expect Messiah any day and every day, right? And if you truly live by that principle, then prepare like it was going to happen. You know what I mean? Prepare like it was going to happen. So, I mean, there was even an ancient Jewish prophecy, or, an antique Jewish prophecy, that if Russia ever invaded Crimea, that the Messiah would come soon. Well, that's already happened, hasn't it? Right? I mean, all these other things, like little minor prophecies, have been fulfilled. Right? Even the Torah code from Rabbi Glazerson was showing this period of years. So there's too much evidence. There's just too much evidence. Okay, and science even said that we were going to see, they say we might not see it anymore, but that in 2022, 2023, we would see the birth of a new star, something that mankind has never seen in recorded known history, right? We would actually be able to see it with our blind eyes. They've later recanted and said it probably won't happen, but the very fact that that even cropped up, and that those two stars out there are actually set, you know what I mean? There's too many coincidences here. There's too many, okay? And there's a ring to the number of 2023 as well. It's like your instinct, your soul can sense that something's going to happen in 2023. Okay? Why are the governments of the world disclosing UFO information now? Why are they admitting that they're real? Do they know that there's going to be some type of arrival? Did some of the angels come down and say, hey, next year there's going to be an event taking place? Did any of this happen? I don't know. I'm just speculating, right? But it makes you wonder. I think something's going to happen in 2023 involving the heavens and the earth. I think it's going to be biblical, and I think that the Bible makes perfect sense in light of this cosmic reality. We're going to be all taken to a new earth, and maybe some of us will come back to this earth when it's been renewed. But anyways, God bless you all. I have to go.